Are you an immigrant looking for a better recipe for living your ultimate American dream journey? Did you come to America to escape persecution? Or as a tourist, a student, for employment, and found America a welcoming place? Or did you make a conscious decision to relocate for a new experience and opportunities? Whatever the case, you have a story. Are you ready to tell yours and have it recorded in the pages of history for your posterity and the world? Was your decision to live in America the best decision you've ever made? These stories and more on this podcast dedicated to you, the modern explorers to America. We feature amazing Nadvigators weekly to share their story, their journey, their challenges and successes, with one goal of helping you to fast track and live your best American dream journey. So what's your Nadvigating story? And now, here is your host, Bassie Simon, with this episode's featured guest, ready to tell their Navigating story.
Hello, Nadvigator Nation. This is a special time that we have a very important guest to come and talk to us about his experience in the United States. Our guest today is Dr. Grajeda. And Dr. Grajeda is a pediatrician at Cook's Children. He was born in Mexico. So Dr. Grajeda did his residency in pediatrics from 2000 and 2005 in Puerto Rico. And he came through El Paso when he first came to United States. And it's interesting because he completed his medical school in Mexico, actually. And it's currently, like I said earlier, he currently works for Cook's Children as pediatrician. And Dr. Grajeda is a very good family man. I believe he's going to fill us in some of the other details about his life. So this is an episode we will be talking about his experience in the United States and what he has learned over the years and how his experience can help us all as we navigate the American experience for ourselves. So, Dr. Grajeda, are you ready to tell us more about yourself at this time?
Of course. Yes, I'm ready.
Go ahead. This is your time.
Okay. Well, let me just tell you that I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I'm grateful, very, very grateful with this country. This is a land of opportunities, and it has been a great ride for me and my family. So we are grateful with the American people. Very briefly, I was born from good parents. I grew up in Mexico in the border city of Ciudad Juarez, which is border with El Paso, Texas. I grew up in a middle to low class home. My mother was a school teacher and she taught me to study. My father, he didn't have a school education. He got to third grade in elementary school and that was it. But he was a very, very hard working man. So he taught me to work. To me, since being a child, learning always came easy. And since being a child, I always wanted to be a doctor. I grew up a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I met my wife in actually a church dance, a church social activity. When we started dating, we both started college. And when we were about to end college, we decided to go on a mission, to go and serve missions. So it was my last semester in med school when I went and served a mission for 2 years. And my wife, my girlfriend then, she left by the end of her business school to go serve a mission also for a year and a half. After that, we returned, we finished our schooling, we got married, And we were doing pretty well in Mexico, in Ciudad Juarez. But I heard a talk from one of our church leaders, President Gordon B. Hinckley. The title of his talk was, "And Peter went out and wept bitterly." And when I heard that talk, it changed my life. It changed my family life. I just want to briefly mention what some of the things that he said. He said, "As I have read this account, my heart goes out to Peter. So many of us are so much like him. We pledge our loyalty. We affirm our determination to be of good courage. We declare, sometimes even publicly, that came what may, we will do the right thing, that we will stand for the right cause, that we will be true to ourselves and to others. Then the pressures begin to build. Sometimes these are social pressures. Sometimes they are personal appetites. Sometimes they are false ambitions. There is a weakening of the will. There is a softening of the discipline. There is capitulation. And then there is remorse, self-accusation, and bitter tears of regret." Of course, this is all related to the time when Peter denied Christ 3 times. Now, he continues, "One of the great tragedies we witness almost daily is the tragedy of men of high aim and low achievement. Their motives are noble. Their proclaimed ambition is praiseworthy. Their capacity is great, but their discipline is weak. They succumb to indolence. Appetite robs them of will." And after hearing this, it was in my mind for days, several days, and finally I spoke with my wife, and then we decided to pursue the good goals that I had before. I always said that I was going to be a specialist, and I was working as a general practitioner then in Mexico, and life was good.
Mm-hmm.
But then those words were very powerful to me, and then we decided to stop what we were doing and continue, move on. And that meant going backwards economically, but continue in education. So I saw my smartest friends from college that they pursued a specialty in the United States. So I asked them, they recommended it's a great thing to do. I talked to my best teachers, and they also gave me advice and said, "Hey, if you can do that, that will be great." Because I also had the option to do this in Mexico. But they said, it will be great. It doesn't matter where you do it. But if you do have the opportunity to do it in the United States, then go ahead and try that. The journey has been long, hard, difficult, and expensive. But it has been totally worth it. Actually, the United States accepted my education that I did in Mexico. I told them they have a list when you are a doctor and you want to come to the United States as a doctor. They have a long list of requisites and things that you need to fulfill. And of course, you need to go one by one and make sure that everything is like accurate, right? And they have a list of universities that they do accept them as good universities, and they will validate your education. Well, that's what happened. My university was in that list, so they accepted my education. But of course, I had to prove that my knowledge was good enough. Right. And so I had to study, and I did that on my own. There are courses for that, but they are expensive, and I didn't have that kind of money. So I had to study on my own to take what we call the USMLE, United States Medical Licensing Examinations. There are several steps of that test. My friends told me that all I needed to do was just pass it. But nowadays, just passing is not good enough.
Wow.
You need to do a lot better. You need to do really, really well to be considered. And another test that you have to pass is the TOEFL, right? The test of English language.
Right.
So I studied 10 months for the step 1, took the test, passed it, did really well. I studied another 10 months, took the step 2 of the test, passed it. I passed the test of English. And after doing that, I became eligible to pursue a residency in the United States. Medical residency, right?
Right.
And then I quickly realized that ignorance has a high cost. Okay, you must be careful.
Wow.
You need to learn and pay attention to the details, because I thought that since I was eligible, that's all I needed, and I didn't send applications. But because of friends, I got one interview, and it was a good interview, but the turn down was that I didn't apply to something called the match. So because of that, there was no position for me. So I had to wait another year, and a year later, I sent about 100 applications. And after sending all those many applications, there were many rejections. Many didn't even answer. Some answered. And at the end, I had one interview, only one interview.
Wow.
And I didn't match. So one of the things that my wife said is like, why don't you apply to Puerto Rico? And I remember my answer was like, Puerto Rico? It's like, that's very far away. It's like, no. But then after not matching, I sent an application to a city in Puerto Rico. And well, being disappointed, being sad, I went to Mexico and took the test to be a specialist in Mexico. I passed the test and I was accepted into a residency in Mexico. When I was about to go, because the stake that we were, they knew, they loved our family. And what they did is they fasted as a stake for us, for me and my family. And something wonderful happened. I really know that this was a miracle. We received a miraculous call that came from Puerto Rico, not from the place that I applied to. It was
wow.
Right? So it was great. It was awesome, and of course they offered me a position, and I jumped right on it. It's like, of course. So then after being offered that position, the things started. So I had to get a J1 visa that you had to fulfill all the requisites one by one for that visa. That included translation, official translation of documents. It's not your own translation or somebody who knows the language. No,
right.
A person who does that as a job. Okay. I received a letter of intention to hire contingent upon my visa approval. Right.
Right.
It was important for the people who give you the visa. I also learned that it's very important to be careful what you write on your resume, because there is something very important called verification of credentials. And doing that in Mexico is quite difficult. Okay. like I put that I worked at the Red Cross in Ciudad Juarez, and that Red Cross that I worked at, they suffered a fire.
Hmm.
And during that fire, records got lost. So there were no records.
Wow.
And when I was trying to verify, yes, I worked in this place, they didn't have anything.
Oh
So
my
it was
gosh.
very hard. I had to go to witnesses, doctors who worked with me, to finally prove them that I was not lying, that I did work there.
Wow.
Another companion that I worked with in a clinic, surprisingly, he gave me a hard time giving me the letter saying, yes.
What?
So, I don't know. There are things that are hard. You need to think about those things.
Right.
And another thing is that people who will hire you, they don't like gaps. So in your resume, any gaps you have to explain. Okay. And
Right.
I have always had to explain my 2-year gap about serving as a missionary. Okay. Then after jumping all those things and finally getting the visa, a friend of mine, a dear, great friend of mine, gave me money to start. I didn't have the money to fly and do all those things. So I had to pay. I didn't know that 2 big packages were more expensive, right? So I had to pay for over baggage. I didn't know the rules on the size of the packages or the weight. Like that. So I just got to the airport, me and my wife and our children, and we had a bunch of packages. So I ended up paying a lot of money over baggage. But we didn't know those things. So those things that you learn along the way. We were a family of 6, my wife and 4 kids. And we didn't know people in Puerto Rico. So when we got there, we had to rent a car, and we arrived on a Saturday night, and Sunday morning we went to church. We were driving, looking for church. We got lost. It's super easy to get lost in Puerto Rico, and there is no easy returns. So as we were looking for a return about probably 2 miles away from the point that we started going wrong, and we were about to turn when we turned to the right, and there was a church. It was not the one we were intended to go, but there was one. So we went in. It was a great experience. Members were great. Puerto Ricans are awesome people.
Yeah. I hear that all the time.
Oh yeah, they are. They received us with love. They made us feel like we belong. And that same day, after church, a family took us to their home and fed us. And there were a lot of phone calls going on until that same night. We already had a rental place that was furnished. So
wow.
It was amazing. Really, really, I consider one miracle behind the other.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it has
Dr.
been.
Grajeda, that was, I could basically listen to this all day long, because this just get to the crux of the matter here, what we really are looking to get from this. And you have given us a very detailed information about your journey so far, and I believe so many people would really benefit from this. There were a couple of things that you touched on, which I would love us to expatiate a little bit on that. And one of the things that you mentioned was that, I'll just pick all of them, and you could just answer them in one big summary. So one thing that you said was that you, for the benefit of those that really don't know the terms of what a mission is, I would like you to explain what that is all about, because that seems a little bit odd that you are in their last year of college and you leave that college for 1 year, 4 years or 3 years, however number, and leave for this mission. I would like you to explain briefly what that mission is and why that is so important to you. The second thing that you touched on, which I would love to also get them a different additional, maybe some insight for benefit of people out the audience listening right now, is that you actually came and you thought that your progress is going to be from a certain part of the country, and you did not actually know about, you didn't give a thought about Puerto Rico. And it's interesting that sometimes in life, really, most of our help or salvation, so to speak, probably come from places, uncertainty, places we didn't even know about, we didn't consider it. And for some reason, you got this knowledge that you should try that after you felt frustrated about the whole situation. So that is the next thing. I would like you to touch on that principle a little bit, because it's important for people to understand that sometimes our journey here, it doesn't mean that because you came in, because one of the problem that I see a lot with some immigrants is that they come to a certain place and they don't look outside that place. They just stay in that place. They don't really try to expand their knowledge about other places. So in your case, if you were not open to this kind of variations, I'm not sure what could have happened. So I'd like you to shed some light on that as a principle so people can really connect with that. Now, the third thing is that we have to be careful about that. Most of the time, although we do all have faith, whatever faith we practice, whether Hindu or Christian or whatever faith, we have faith, but somewhere along the line, you talked about the fact that a lot of help you got came from friends and people who cared about you. So I'd like you to touch on those 3 points briefly before we move on to something else. And as part of that friends discussion, I'd like you to also expand on the idea that because knowledge, we always hear this word all the time, knowledge is power, right? And you just really give a very big application on what that really means, because you did not know something and you failed to recognize what you were supposed to do because you didn't have that information. So you had to pay the price to wait for a year or two without pursuing stuff, and you got frustrated and you wanted to go back and start. So let's go ahead, and I'd like to hear your opinion on those 3 items.
First, let me talk about the mission. In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we serve missions. It is expected that every young man between the ages of 18 to 26 is going to serve a mission. And sisters can serve missions if they want to. So my girlfriend, now my wife, and I, when we were by the end of our college studies, I was in my 5th year of med school, we had a serious talk, and we decided that we were going to go on a mission because faith, it was strongly rooted in us. And there was no doubt that we were going to continue to be strong members of the church, active. And we prayed and we decided that it was important that we serve missions. So we both went. She went to the Guadalajara area. She served in 3 different states. And I went to the northwest of Mexico, and I served in the state of Sonora, Mexico. It's the Mexico Hermosillo mission. Our mission was proselyting. So I think almost everybody in the world knows those 2 young men that wear a white shirt and a tie. They have a backpack or something of that sort, And they are often, you can see them on bikes. Well, that was me, and that was my wife. And we were knocking on doors, asking for people to listen to our message. We did that for 2 years. We had many wonderful experiences and stories from that time that build up, right? They give us a very, very strong foundation about life and God and church. They will serve us for the rest of our lives. So that's what happened. That is the type of mission that we serve. And after our missions, we returned home, finished college, got married. And life went on, right? There are many things that had happened since then. That was back in 1990, just about. Now, the other question that you asked was how we ended up in Puerto Rico, when before I didn't consider that, right? Because I thought that Puerto Rico was too far. We didn't know anybody there. But my wife asked me one time, it's like, why don't you apply to Puerto Rico? And my answer was that. It's like, what? Puerto Rico? Now that's very far away, and we don't know anybody there. So I didn't. But then when I was not selected the first year, when I was not selected the second year, I sent an application to Puerto Rico, to one city, and the miraculous response that we got came from a different city. And I even asked the director one time, not when I arrived. I didn't want to ask when I arrived. But
you don't want to go change anything, right?
No. But later, when I was already a senior in the residency, I asked the director, like, do you remember how you got my name? He could not remember.
Wow.
So how my application ended up in his hands and what happened, we don't know. He didn't remember. But I do know that this came from heaven, right? I do strongly believe that. But again, quite often I have found out that we think a certain way. We planned things in a certain way, but God takes us in a different way. And sometimes we believe that that's not the route to go, but hey, He knows better, right? So
right.
When my wife said, why don't you apply to Puerto Rico? And I was like, why? It's too far. But that's where we ended up. And it was great. It was a great experience. Even not knowing anybody there, going through the hard times and difficulties and things that happened, it was great. It was a great thing. So we have to be receptive to the possibilities of some alternative route, right? And we have to explore the possibilities there. I did listen to the recommendations from friends, not just one, but they gave me suggestions, they gave me direction, they helped me in many ways, many ways. So it is important to ask around, find out, ask not only for one single source, but from many, but just don't stay with what they recommend, but you also have to check the websites, requisites that are needed, and make sure that you fulfill all of them. Because the other question was related to how sometimes we pay the price for ignorance, right? For knowing, right? And I studied, prepared so long, so much, many hours of studying, right? I studied an average of 8 hours a day for 10 months for each test. And I felt prepared, but I missed a little single line thing that I didn't pay attention to. I know I read it, but it didn't stuck in my mind as something match program It's called a National Residency Matching Program, where what they do is like a computer algorithm that matches applicants with hospitals.
Right.
And I didn't apply to that. So the one interview that I had that could give me a match, it didn't happen because I didn't apply. So
wow.
And I was a good candidate, but not so amazing that they will hire me even without applying to the match, right?
Wow.
I think that is reserved only for genies, right? For people who get 100 in the tests and all that. And I didn't. So that answer the questions. And the other thing that we mentioned is Puerto Ricans are great people. They are awesome. So people in general are good. I do believe in the goodness of people anywhere you go. And of course there will be bad people too. But we have been always very fortunate that wherever we go, we always find awesome, amazing people with great hearts. And that's what happened when we were there. We were received with open arms, and we have many dear, loved friends in Puerto Rico.
Wow. So that's a amazing answers that you've given there. I want to piggyback into one more thing that you said there before we go into what I call the lightning round, where you just give advice and talk about some of the things that you have enjoyed and some of the experiences you've gained. I want to just talk to you about when you came from Mexico with your medical degree already. So what kind of, I know you talked about you had to study and you had to cure some deficiencies, but what kind of challenges did you have? I mean, because some of the things that I sort of hear a lot of times, and as a matter of fact, I know some friends who actually came here as medical doctors. Some of them went forward to become doctors here, but some never did because for whatever reason, they never continued. They went a different route either. So I'm trying to understand, for the benefit of people who come here as already medical doctors from different countries. I remember you saying that there are some universities that have to be in the list of good universities to be accepted from. But generally, let's say the person is from that list. What are the things that they need to be aware of for them to be able to really get back into the medical field? I get it. It's a lot of studies because you have to cure a lot of deficiencies. Probably not a whole lot in your case, because I believe maybe the education system in Mexico is pretty much close to the United States, maybe. But what are some of the challenges that you had to deal with to be able to actually get into the medical school? You talked about doing the deficiencies and taking different classes, English as second language and all of that. That must have been hard. I mean, so.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a border city, and growing up there, I think English came easier. Like free TV channels, many of them were English, right, from the neighbor El Paso, Texas. In Mexico, and since middle school and high school, we studied English as a second language. So that was a big help. So the language was not a big deal because of where I grew up and because I was a good student during middle school and high school. And then when I was in college, I was selected to be part of a research team, a scientific research team.
Okay.
And just by belonging to that team, one of the requisites was that I had to be enrolled in the language center of the university.
Right.
took English again, but this time they did a test, determined what level of English I was in, and then they enrolled me from level, I think, 4, 5, and 6. That's what I needed. So that was even more progression. So by the time I took these tests, I was proficient already.
Right. Now, do you still remember the resources? Like you talked about a list of good universities that American Medical Association would receive. So I think that would be a very good resource to put on the resource section of our platform. So if somebody is interested in pursuing that, when they came here as medical doctors already, they could also do that.
Exactly. Well, the visa that I obtained is called J1. The J1 is a student exchange visa, a student exchange, right? And when you read the requisites for obtaining that kind of visa, there are many. There is a long list. And they recognize my medical studies, right? But there is a list by country of universities that are recognized, right?
Okay.
So, and the list is long, very, very long. So basically, they don't accept small, not fully recognized universities. But if your university was big and well recognized, then I don't think there will be a problem. Just from my state, there were the two biggest, one, the University of Ciudad Juarez, where I studied, and the University of Chihuahua. But there were many, many, many more from the country, right? So you have to check that list, and I think you will find it where you look for J1 visas, student exchange visas. There must be a link. They will take you. And remember, this happened, I don't know, like 20 years ago. So I don't remember the exact details, but I know that there is a link that will take you to the list of approved universities.
From the J1 visa application and link. Okay, that's it. That's a good information. Now, let me talk about one more thing here, because one theme that keep repeating from what you're saying is that you had a lot of help from people when you came, and a lot of friends. Now, was that a sort of you fell into sort of a community? When I interviewed one of the first guests, she did also mention something about when people come here newly, they have to find some community to belong, because that can actually help them. So did you already have that community in place because you belong to a certain group, or did you have to create that community out of your own initiatives? How did you create that community and such great friendship?
Well, I had helped two different ways. One was my friends who were already medical doctors and who already went through that route. They will give me many directions, many good advice and tips, right? And they recommended specific books that I needed to study, right?
Right.
They will say, you need this and this and this. And actually, a few of them hand me down some of the materials they studied themselves.
Yeah.
And they will recommend, this book is like the best, you need to buy this one. And in that book, like one of my favorite ones, it's called First Aid for the USMLE Step 1. That is a wonderful book, and that book is divided in several sections. One of the sections will tell you this material for sure is going to be tested. And then there is another large section that says these materials may be tested. So you have to study and learn these things.
Right.
And there is another section that talks about the test and the format of the test, how it is divided in 2 different days, 8 hours each day, the type of questions, There is no penalty for guessing and many other things that are important, right? And there is a very good section at the end of the book that tells you for this subject, all these books are good and they were graded from A plus, A minus, B plus, B, and all the way down. So I think that material was awesome, really, really excellent. And that's what I use for my own personal study.
Okay.
What I would do is I will test myself per subject. I will divide my 10 months in from this time to this time. I will study this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And I will always test myself at the beginning, study, and test myself at the end. And I could see like a progress, a significant progress, right?
Wow.
And my goal was I need to be right here and able to get good grades, right? And that was the goal. And if my second test I was not at the goal, then I have to review more material and study a little more. And I did that for both the step 1 and the step 2. So those are important things. You must, if you are a doctor and you will take the USMLEs, you must study hard and you better get good grades, because the people who will invite you for interviews, many of them will only interview you if you get good grades.
Wow.
Yeah, they will say from this number up. If you got 1 point less than that, don't even send us an application.
Okay. Wow. That's challenging right there.
Yeah, of course. So it is important they study hard. Now, if for some reason they don't feel up to the challenge, then they have other options like studying to be a physician assistant.
Right.
Which at the end is almost the same than being a physician. They will do the same kind of work, but they will be under the supervision of a physician. But they have to enter physician school, physician assistant school, and that will be the route. Another thing is, if you are already a specialist in your country, the United States is not going to recognize your specialty. They will only recognize your medical school. Then after you pass the test and you apply and you write in your resume that you already are a specialist, you are already a surgeon or a pediatrician or whatever, of course that gives you many points for them calling you for an interview. Because you already have years of experience, right? Right. So that's how a surgeon in Mexico can become a surgeon in the United States. But if he did 4 years in Mexico, well, he will have to do another 4 in the United States.
Wow.
But the big difference is that residency, it's the same in Mexico and in everywhere. Residency is a mix of studying and working at the same time. So you get paid during residency.
Hello, Nadvigators. Thank you. You have been listening to the Nadvigating story of Dr. Hector Grajeda today. I want to give a special thank you to Dr. Grajeda for taking the time out of his busy schedule to share a portion of his story with us. What a fascinating insight into what life was like for him at the very beginning of his American journey. And he shared with us quite a bit of nuggets of knowledge to help others that may be at the very beginning stages of their own journey. One thing that is common to all the Nadvigators that we have been interviewing so far is this. Behind every successful journey, there is always an equal number of failures, frustrations, and challenges along the way. Dr. Grajeda, you truly demonstrated all of that and more. Wow, I cannot wait to hear the concluding portion of your journey. Nadvigators, be sure to tune in to the concluding part of Dr. Grajeda's story in episode 10, where he will share one of a kind comical moments of his journey with us. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found some inspiration from the story of Dr. Grajeda today to help you find success in your own navigating journey. Remember that you have your own unique navigating story, and here at the Nadvigators podcast, we believe that you should share your story with the rest of the world. I'll be honored to be your partner in sharing that unique story on this podcast. I tell every story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It is easy to get started. Send an email to me at guest@natcast.com to get the ball rolling. For right now, I want you to share this episode with your friends and family or other navigators that you know. There are several avenues to do that, okay? On the Nadvigators YouTube channel, when you get there, remember to subscribe and also leave a comment on the Facebook fan page or directly on our official website, natcast.com. And be sure to bookmark Nadvigators podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We are available on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. When you find the podcast, do me a favor, subscribe to be notified of new episodes and leave a comment on those platforms. That's how we get to move this podcast for a lot of people to listen to hear these stories. For now, I am Bassi Simon, your host and Captain Nadvigator, signing off until the next episode where I bring you another fascinating Nadvigator story. Remember this, none of us is smarter than all of us. And don't forget to help someone on your way up.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Nadvigators podcast, Navigating the American Dream with Bassi Simon. For more information about our stories, our guests, or how to get involved and share your navigating story, head over to our website at nadcast.com. That's NADCAST.com for more information. Continue the conversation on Facebook.com/Nadvigators. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or on your favorite podcast listening platform so others can find us and enjoy the show too.